Hello everyone. Thought of making this video after I was scrolling on Reddit and someone was asking if their mono fusion team was future-proof or WuWa because they noticed a significant decrease in their score, and to be honest they were only a few hundred points off of not even hitting the halfway requirement for the 4.5k to S WuWa, right? Now, of course, with all WuWa subreddits, people are completely lying and sugarcoating the truth, saying yes, even though you barely hit the halfway requirement for S and WuWa, it's for sure future proof going into version 3. Like, are we fucking idiotic, right? But that aside, that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is simply future proof itself, and the characters that I thought about it, the ones that tend to be the most future proof and have the most value. Right. Now, of course, many of you who have been playing these gacha games for a long time, it would probably be very, very obvious to you, especially WuWa players, as there is like a very standout case of a character like this, but it's very simply generalist supports. DPSs, they fall off and get constantly released. Niche supports, they look really strong on release and while they're getting shielded, but the second the game moves on to shielding something else, they suddenly look weaker and lose their use cases going into the future. But generalist supports are kinda exceptional, because even if they get so-called power crept, they still have an incredible amount of use cases as a substitute for a team in which you don't always have the best in slot full, team for, right? So characters like these end up having incredible value despite the fact that they are much older. Sometimes they have greater value than a newer version's teammates or characters, and you can literally see this with SK and WuWa. This is the exact case scenario. SK is the highest value unit in WuWa still, despite the fact that she's a version 1 unit, and we're about to go now into version 3, simply because she's the only limited character, limited support, that WuWa ever decided to make a generalist, and very clearly they fucking regret that shit, so they made that change to TOA, right? Now, I actually have no problems with endgame difficulty increasing if they were to release generalist supports decently consistently, but because SK is basically the only exception to the rule basically in WuWa, I have to say I'm pretty sad that they didn't continue making more generalists in the game, as you guys know, I'm a big niche support hater. Right, like these characters are always getting glazed on their release. CCs are saying, oh my god, their value is immense, but then you go and you actually start to think about the future and you'd slowly come to the realization you will probably never touch this character again if you ever move on from the team that you're currently using them with. And so that's why generalist supports have so much greater value. Even though HSR has very bad power creep and HP inflation, basically the only reason I've been able to keep up with a game well is because of the fact that they decently consistently released generalist supports, and so I can use characters like E1 Ruan Mei despite the fact that she's over fucking what, 20? No, hold on. Let me not get ahead of myself. She's over 2 years old. She's about 2.5 years old actually, and I still use her on both of my HSR accounts for clearing endgame content when I don't have a full best in slot team, and I especially use her when it comes to tackling APOC. And Ruan Mei is technically free because they gave a golden token on the anniversary, which you can exchange for a free Ruan Mei, and they gave another golden token in the current patch, which means you can even get E1 Ruan Mei for free, right? And that's what I did on the majority of my accounts. And you also have Tribby. She may not be best in slot for a lot of the meta currently. However, she's still going to age better than a lot of other, niche characters that look really good right now. Because, well, the shilling will eventually stop for those niche characters. Won't be able to take full advantage of their kits anymore. And they will slowly fall off, right? So, to answer the question of, if anything is future proof in these games that are commonly riddled with HP inflation and power creep, the answer is always going to be no, right? Because in reality, these game devs, they can take a sudden shift in their direction of designing kits and characters, and all of a sudden everything goes to shit, right? Even a generalist could technically get very badly power crept if the power creep was bad enough in the generalist support, archetype, right? However, I will say, I believe generalist supports are easily the closest any type of character gets in these gacha games to being future proof, given from what I've played in HSR, given from the little I've played in ZZZ, given from what I've played in WuWa. Generalist supports are always at the absolute peak of tier lists, and they always have the greatest longevity in terms of being like T0, T0.5 around that mark, because of the fact that they are just so useful even in the future, right? Don't have a best in slot teammate, easily slot them in, and you can still make the team very usable. That has great value in of itself, right? So let me know what you guys think. Do you disagree with me? Do you think there's a lot of different archetypes that could technically be future proof, right? I'm not saying things are that our other characters can't be technically future proof and last very well for years. However, in any one of these gacha games that's like, pretty well riddled with HP inflation, any types of power creep, I do think that people should probably recognize the only characters who are going to stand the test of the time are generalists, right? Now, I made a community post a while back saying that I was looking on whether or not to pull Prolova because of power creep, right? New version power creep. And someone tried to come to the defense of WuWa like they always do, because they want to believe their game has no power creep or HP inflation, and said, oh, there's no way this game's going to have any power creep, it's not that severe. Because I responded to someone asking for my opinions, I told them that it's likely that sub DPSs in version 3 will be stronger than main DPSs in version 2, right? They're like, nah, no way it's that bad. But I'm like, this literally happened, right? It's not like this is a special case scenario. This already basically happened during version 2, where main DPS can actually be stronger than most version 1 teams. I actually believe with Lupa, hyper carry Brant, if you actually do his double anchor rotation, is stronger than any version 1 team as well. So you have two cases of sub DPSs in hyper carry being stronger than any of the hyper carry teams back in version 1. And someone tried to refute my point, saying that was late version 2. However, I don't know if they turned their brain off, but version 1 of WuWa was way shorter than a normal version's length, only being, I believe, 5 patches as compared to a normal version's 8 to 9 patches. So if version 1 was as long as any other version, technically speaking, would have been 2.2, right? So considering version 2 is 7 to 8 patches and version 3 should be 8-9 patches possibly as well, it is very likely that in the first half of version 3 we do get a sub DPS who in their hyper carry is actually stronger than any version 2 main DPS. And I know that sounds crazy, however, at the end of the day, shit like this always happens. This isn't me trying to, go in on WuWa, because HSR literally does this too, right? They arguably do it just as bad. We had the wheelchair cop of Tribi plus Hyacine basically carrying every single version 2 DPS. Hyacine hyper carry is probably stronger than every single version 2 DPS. Same goes for hyper carry Tribi. There are a lot of sub DPSs in new versions of HSR that are technically stronger as compared to the version 2 teams. So this isn't to pick on WuWa once again. It's just an absolute reality. These games have power creep, they have HP inflation, they will shield the newest characters, and the only characters who stand the best test of time are generalist supports, right? Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. I love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Ooh, a chest. And peace out.